I'm blown away. I really think this is a huge new step for GW in game design. Like, this has all the elements of the huge epic apocalypse, but condensed into a format that is actually playable finally, at some sort of reasonable, like, human scale in terms of time. I really am impressed with how the mechanics of the turns give nuance and strategy, but don't take away. You can't blow a knight right off the table and have your nut play with your fancy toy.
Usually whenever GW releases a new system, they usually have like, oh, you played this big of a game, this is roughly how long it will take. And a lot of times I find like, it's hard to really scale it in, and you either have to speed up your play or it's gonna take you longer, even when you're learning. And I found with this, it held pretty close because everything moves a lot smoother. You're not worried about every individual model's loadout. They've streamlined a lot of that, especially when you have a unit like, say, the Tyranid Warriors, where you can have multiple weapons on multiple dudes, when they've all just got a ranged bioweapon or a melee bioweapon. It makes it a lot easier. You just go, oh, these guys all have melee bioweapons. Off you go.
I actually really like the system. The larger the game gets, though, I feel like there are some strategic elements that get lost simply on like this physical space that you have. Like, just thinking into my like super heavy detachment over there with the two Astraeuses and the Spartan, they can't move through the terrain features at all.
That may be our terrain's fault.
Yeah, but they don't have enough clearance to move from this side all the way over to this side. And
not unless
interesting,
they charge.
And they can't land on other models either, right?
Or
so
on
depending on
terrain,
how,
right,
yeah, like so depending on how hard you castle, movement can be kind of difficult. However, in like I could see that in smaller games, or if you had this game but stretched over a larger table, I think it could be like really interesting in like the movement element of moving everything, attacking everything, and then having damage dealt at the end. I think that it creates a lot of really interesting scenarios.
There definitely, I have to say that overall, compared to what I'm used to, the damage is a little anemic. You don't wipe things wholesale like you, and even focus firing 2 Titans into a Hierophant. I think we did, what, a grand total of 3 wounds, and one of them was to morale?
But with that being said, if I can just interject, characters are much more flimsy. Where in like regular 40k, if you have a Space Marine captain, he's sitting there all day long. But here, they've got 1 wound. There's no such thing as like an invul, right? So with no invulnerable saves, and like our Space Marine captains and all of those things that have 1 wound, no ranged weapons. Like a 6-up armor save. Like, characters felt very
fragile.
Like very, very fragile. But aside from their auras, they don't have a lot of that like. Yeah.
Well, we also had way too many force multipliers stuffed together. We had lieutenants and captains, and right next to, Rebooty Gullyman, we had way too much.
And I think part of that also is like with the command assets, and that was where like that kind of really affected it too, is most of that damage for us, we weren't targeting those characters out with our units. It was those command assets that gave us that ability to damage them and force them and actually damage them that way. The command assets actually add more to it, yeah. It adds a little bit more depth to the game because, again, going back to the old Apocalypse systems where you're playing and you've got, say an army that's very psychic heavy, your opponent's just sitting there while you're going after psychic spell after psychic spell after psychic spell, whereas this, they exist, they're out there, but it's not going to be an overwhelming amount of just, okay, I'm gonna sit here while you cast 20 spells and I can't do anything about it.
I think there was one command asset that really broke the bank, which was your Armor of Contempt. That one turned what we thought was hopefully something interesting into almost nothing. As compared to another command asset which moves 1 blast marker, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
With the Tyranids, you get 2, right? Like, we get 1 in the Apocalypse cards and then 1 in the Tyranid specific cards. We were lucky, first turn we drew 1, second turn we drew another. So like, you just got lucky their next turn, we wouldn't have drawn any because we were out of them.
It also strikes me that's an Apocalypse card. We didn't have it in our deck. As in, building these decks is going to be a part of this game that is going to touch on Shadespire and other things that have that like other aspect to them, that you can build a deck that really makes your army sing, where if you just are trying to play these things kind of randomly, it's going to be a lot less effective.
Yeah, we had cards in our deck that we would have never used that were just there. We got like Insane Bravery. Look at that, top of the deck. Pass a morale test. We took no morale test the entire game, really.
Well, that one?
That didn't matter. We were outside of the HQ.
But couldn't you just pass it with that card?
No.
It's not a morale test.
It wasn't a morale. It was a route. Yeah.
So they would have ran no matter what.
Something that I find really interesting too is like when you defining like roles for your detachments and your units, and like trying to build like a cohesive detachment that functions kind of like a unit. Like, so if you're, let's say you're playing Space Marines in regular 40k and you have a Devastator squad, you would never, build them the way that they are on the box with like a multi-melta plasma cannon, heavy bolter, missile launcher. You'd never do that. You would define a role and build them with like, 3 missile launchers or 4 las cannons or 4 heavy bolters, and you would define a role. And like, because they have to be so close to each other, I feel like that's the same way, just on a much larger scale, right? If you want a detachment that's going to be your long-range support, you would build it like that and put that whole detachment.
Because if you throw a charge token onto that, they don't get to shoot. So you want to basically pick one order for your entire detachment. So if you want to come running off half-cocked into combat, you don't want to have a lot of guns in that detachment.
Yeah, exactly, right? Because they all have to do the same thing. And then they all have to be reasonably good at it too. Yep.
I do like, however, how they've also added the element, again, through the command assets, where it's, if you have picked an order, there are cards that you can build your deck to where it's like, okay, in case I want to do this with this unit and something changes, like the ones that you guys used on us, the Psyker Power, was it Scryer's Gaze? Yeah. Right? It lets you look at three of your opponents and then change yours based on that. Like, that's a nice reactive ability. I know there's a few that we had in our deck where it's just straight up, if you chose to assault, you can now shoot, or if you want to shoot, you can assault and actually change your tactics mid-game. So it does offer a little bit of tactical flexibility, yeah.
We were arguing about it pre-game. I was like, take these guys and shoot at the tanks because I care about the tanks. Those are just 2 targets.
And I was focused, like I knew the Warlord was gonna be a tough kill, but I was like, you know what? I wanna see the Reaver at least go down.
Yeah. And it would have next round.
You know what?
Next time.
If I'm being honest, if I were to sit down and rebuild my Ultramarines like the Imperium side of this, like I would take that and like put it away, because like it trying to kill this or trying to kill them like didn't affect the game as much as like 150 points worth of like drop pods and tactical Marines would. It would have been a wall.
But you know what?
And it would have taken you turns and turns to chew through all of those, and you couldn't get to our objective.
But
proper chaff is big in this game.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that this actually brings in, like talking about the Titans and how effective they were against each other, I think this actually kind of helps in the sense that where even if you do bring Titans, again, with the older systems, the biggest issue you had is the minute you put something bigger on the table, it was gone immediately, right? Your opponents did not let it stand. Whereas now, it's actually, with the amount of damage that we did to both sides and the fact that no Titans are dead, it's almost more effective to just shoot everything else, right? Because that one squad of Hellblasters that has a single wound, if you can put, a couple destroyer blasts into that, you're more effectively going to wipe that out instead of, trying to kill out the Titans.
But, see, that raises an interesting point. These, the big Bellicosa cannons, those cannons, awesome when wounding monsters, but absolute garbage wounding infantry. It'll be wounding a tank on 2s, and it likely wounds infantry on 6s or 7s or something like that. Looking at like las cannons, they wound tanks on 3s, infantry on 9s, right? Yeah.
Just I have it in front of me, the Hydrophant, tanks on a 4, infantry on an 8.
On an 8, right? So the thing is like, it has a role. And this thing, even doing its role, we pumped this thing into these. Like, granted, you rolled well, you used command assets, but I don't know. I don't.
No, wait, it killed one.
It did
Tyrannofex.
damage.
Real good.
Whoa, hold up.
Whoa.
The Warlord Titan brought down a Tyrannofex, so.
Just like that. I want to bring something up about what you said about how the interaction forces the strategy of taking out what you can take out and having the Titans remain, which ends the game with 2 Titans smashing each other in the face in the middle of the map, which exactly sounds what we want out of Apocalypse. So I gotta say this.
The nice thing too is your strength against tank profile. It's a very general profile. Like it's not necessarily like 40k where it's against Titanic and super heavy only. It's basically anything that's got a monster profile, right? So like even if it was shooting into say Old One Eye, the Hive Tyrant, it's like that would have been murdering them because Old One Eye has 2 wounds on it. If you get, you know, you get an apocalyptic blast on it, he's probably dead, right? Because he's gonna make at least 2 saves, if not, or no, he's gonna make 2 saves on D6s and he needs 6s. Like, it's still effective. I think it's just one of those things where as we play more, we'll figure out the effectiveness of all the weapons and the units.
I was stupendously afraid of the Gene Stealers, and there's only 2 packs of 20 of them. It's nuts. Like, because when you compare them to like something of like something that would be like equally frightening from like a Space Marine squad, like or from the Space Marine side, like when I think they get 10 attacks.
Yeah, we don't know. We know that they are stupendously effective in hand-to-hand combat. They're getting 10 attacks. When we shoot one of our Space Marine units, it's getting 1. And these things are wounding infantry on what, 4s?
6.
That's a whole pile of dice.
They wound Titanics on 8. We messed up because we didn't infiltrate them, but they were by far the superstar of the game. Just taking units in match units, the match unit of 20, being 10 attacks, hitting on 3s, having the Broodlord there, hitting on 2s.
Based on the benefits that you get from going to these larger size units, I feel like they want you to go for the bigger. They don't want you to go for the MSUs. They want you to go max that unit out. Just bring as many bodies as you can and bring the hate.
HQs, I think, like, we ran the Flying Tyrant into littler guys that in a normal 40k game would have been okay. Moving over here, like, rolls, looks in thinking, oh, my Flying Tyrant's gonna do something. Looks
Right.
in, 1 attack.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean,
it's like, yeah, he's probably gonna get like 2 or 3 attacks. He's probably gonna do some damage. Take him into Gulliman, and all of a sudden it's like he gets 1 attack. Oh, okay. I guess I'll try.
But you know what? That coincides with exactly what we experienced over there. Like Primaris Captain, 1 wound, dead. Primaris Ancient, 1 wound, dead. Just died from the debris that was raining down from the atmosphere. And then here, look, like Swarmlord versus Calgar. Calgar in 40k gets like 6 attacks, like power fists, re-rolling everything. They're like strength 8, so crazy. Here, 2 attacks. That's all Calgar gets. Yep. And when you roll it, you're like, oh, okay. It feels so underwhelming, right? But in the grand scheme of like your enormous game,
I think the D12s are necessary to the game, not only for the speed up factor, but to basically you're shooting a full unit that rolls 1 D6 to hit, then a D12 to wound. In a normal unit, you could roll 5 dice and roll 5 ones. Not a good chance of that happening, but it could happen, right? The D12 allows the damages to actually happen. And then the small.
Yeah, dynamically allows you to like have this interesting interplay of dice and statistics that like, yeah, create, it's a good thing and well used. It's not just a gimmick. Sometimes you see an extra dice used, but it's
just to sell extra dice.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And this is not, it makes sense. It's functioning within the game.
It makes sense. We played a 600-point game. I think it'd be really interesting to play smaller games. I feel like move way faster.
Yeah, if we did half the size, like 300 and 300, this would have blown by so much faster.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it could be quite competitive too. I think that there's enough here to pick up like real interesting interplay, real tactics.
Quite honestly, if we would have went for the extra table, like for the 25 more points, like we were supposed to, like 17 more points, it would have spread out the game and made it
a little less congesty.
I think it would have moved a whole lot better. Go for the bigger table size, I think.
Bigger table size?
Like we could barely deploy.
And more Titans!
Oh my god,
so,
yeah.
I mean, it's huge. But yeah, all in all, Apocalypse is excellent. Apocalypse is excellent.
Yeah, I think it's a win.
It's a win.
It's definitely a win for me.